Hi everyone, this is Instructor Hernandez and I'm using this video lecture to discuss the upcoming essay number 3. Essay number 3 is what would be referred to as a literary analysis. So in terms of what a literary analysis is, it's an analysis of a book, and in this case it would be The Alchemist, in order to better understand the book's messages, interpret meanings in the book, and also appreciate the author's techniques. And the purpose of a literary analysis is to go below the surface level of the book and deepen our understanding of how the book works, in other words, how it functions, and also what it means. There are a few key elements to a literary analysis. First, a literary analysis should have an arguable thesis. Even though we're writing about a novel, your essay should not consist mostly of plot summary. It should be considered an argumentative essay, just like your first 2 essays were, and you will also have a thesis statement that is arguable. So that means that someone can argue against your thesis. And what you want to show is that your analysis is valid and that this is just one interpretation of the book. So you're not proving your point absolutely. You're just making a strong argument in favor of your interpretation. A literary analysis will also pay heavy attention to the language used in the book. And when we're writing a literary analysis, it's useful to conduct what is called a close reading of the book. So by now, you all should have finished the book or be close to finishing it. And the first time you read a book, you're mostly reading to understand what the book is about. When you start composing your third essay, you want to go back and reread certain passages and look specifically at the language that the author uses, because a literary analysis will assume that every word is meaningful. You also want to pay attention to patterns or themes in the book, and we've discussed a few throughout the semester. So now in essay number 3, you're going to pick one particular theme and really flesh out the details of that theme, which I'll explain in a moment. You also want to use the book and outside resources to show evidence of those patterns or themes being meaningful. And finally, you want to produce a clear interpretation of the book. So keeping this in mind, you'll select one theme and you'll interpret that theme's meaning and how it contributes to the overall significance of the book. And again, you're just showing one way that the text can be understood. A book such as The Alchemist can be open to multiple interpretations. So again, the purpose of your essay is not to prove absolutely that yours is the only interpretation that exists, but that it's one that is valid. When you're writing a literary analysis, there are 3 common approaches that you can take. First, you can analyze the text itself. So you can trace how a theme or a certain character or certain language in the book is developed and expressed. When you're looking at themes, characters, and language, you also want to be asking yourself, how do these things create a particular meaning, tone, or effect? For example, we've talked about a theme in the book, and that is the concept of the personal legend, or a theme of self-discovery. So if you pick that as a theme for your essay, you want to examine the particular meaning of this theme or the effect that it has on the book overall. Another way to approach a literary analysis is to examine your own response to the text and how it affects you as a reader. And for this, you can not only examine your intellectual response, but your emotional response as well. And this is similar to what you did in the first essay, although some of you did not explicitly address the book. You did talk about your response to the concept of a personal legend. Finally, the third approach is to look at the book in context, or rather a larger context. So analyzing the text as its place in history or in a certain culture. And I will say for this novel in particular, we know that it takes place in a certain part of the world, but it can really be at any place in history. It's not entirely clear that the book was written about any specific point in time. So this might be a little more difficult to do, although you could certainly talk about the cultures that are discussed in the book or the geographical locations. You could also discuss how the book is representative of a particular genre. So we have discussed how The Alchemist has characteristics of the hero's journey and how we see those characteristics play out in the book. Now, in terms of getting started with your essay, what you'll want to do first is reread the text, and not necessarily the entire book, but the sections that relate to the theme you are choosing as the focus of your essay. So remember, as I said a couple slides ago, our first reading of the book is really just to understand the plot and to get a sense of what is happening. When you do a close reading, you're going back and you're reading for analysis. So you're examining the language choices of the author, the context, as well as your own reaction as a reader. Next, you want to come up with a strong thesis. So remember that a literary analysis is still an argumentative essay. So your thesis should be arguable and also specific. And remember that this is only one way of interpreting the text. Finally, you're going to choose evidence that supports your argument. And the evidence will come from the book itself, as well as the outside sources that you find by conducting research. And on Monday, we're going to the library for our library instruction, and the librarian will show you different research strategies that you can use to find outside sources for this essay. When it comes to writing a literary analysis, there are some conventions in terms of style that you want to pay attention to. So first is the use of pronouns and verbs. For this type of essay, you do want to avoid using first or second person, like we have discussed with the first two essays, and instead make direct assertions when you're discussing anything related to the book. So whether you're discussing a particular language choice of the authors or an event that takes place, you just want to state it directly and use third person whenever possible. When we're discussing either language in the book or events that take place, we also want to put those in present tense, even if the book is discussing something that happened in the past tense. So whenever you're, for instance, summarizing an event that happened in the book or paraphrasing, you do want to do that in the present tense. However, if you are looking at the historical context of the book and you're connecting it to a place in time or a part of a culture, you would discuss that in the past tense if it's relevant. So now that we've gone over the features for essay number 3, let's take a look at the essay prompt in more detail. And you can find the essay prompt on Canvas. It's posted in the module for this upcoming week, which I believe is week 10. And you can see the instructions here. So now that we've completed the novel, or we will have completed the novel by the time you start this essay, you will select one theme that's presented in the book and analyze that theme in the form of a research paper. You will also find 2 to 3 sources to use in your essay aside from the book itself. So in terms of the theme, you can see a list of potential themes here. You could also propose your own if you felt that there was one that was really significant and that you would like to discuss. Just run it by me first so I can make sure that's workable for this essay. Once you've selected a theme, your essay will focus on how that theme is developed throughout the book. So for instance, if you choose the theme of fear, you can discuss how the use of fear or different types of fear, for instance, the fear of failure, is developed throughout the book. You can also focus on how it's expressed through the use of language and/or characters. So either characters themselves or the things that they say or language that the author uses, and how that theme contributes to the overall meaning of the book or how it's significant. And I know with literary analyses, these can be complex essays. They can be a bit difficult to wrap our heads around coming up with a thesis statement, for instance, but we will have a little bit more time to spend on this essay than the other two. So if you're not sure yet what to write about, that's okay. What you want to think of first is which of these themes interests you and which one would you like to explore. Then as you start conducting your research, you want to see which theme you can find the most sources on. And if you need to switch your focus for this essay, that's okay as well, because you might start out by researching a particular theme, but then feel like the research isn't really going anywhere, or you're stumped about what to write about. So if you want to change to a different theme that you think would be more manageable to write about, you can do that. The requirements for this essay are pretty similar to the first 2 essays. So the word count is 500 to 750 words. You want to make sure that you're fully addressing the writing prompt and including a clear and direct thesis statement, as well as examples to support your ideas. The main difference with this essay is that you will have 2 to 3 outside sources in addition to the novel that you will use in your essay. And those sources must be found through the CSUN Library database. In terms of your sources, you can refer to books, although I would only do this if you have time to read an entire book. Otherwise, you would want to use any academic magazine, newspaper, or journal articles. You can also have a credible website as one of your sources, but you should only have one website total. So your additional sources would either need to be books or articles. And this essay, like all the others, will be in MLA format, and you will be required to submit a works cited page. And since we're conducting research with this essay, we will go over MLA citation and format in much more detail. And as with the other essays, you will first compose a preliminary draft and then have that draft reviewed during our peer review. And then you'll submit the final draft after the peer review. And remember that with this essay, like the others, you can attend a tutoring visit. Either it can be your required tutoring visit for the semester if you have not attended one yet, or if you already have, then this tutoring visit would just count as extra credit. So as I mentioned earlier, on Monday the 1st, we will be in the library for our library instruction. And then we'll continue our discussion of essay number 3. And like I mentioned, we will have a lot more time with this essay. So The first draft is not due for a few more weeks, but I would like you to start thinking about it and reviewing the prompts, starting your preliminary research, because you will need the research in order to write the first draft. So it's never too late to get started, especially after our library instruction. So that is all for now. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And if you have any questions about the third essay or anything else in the class, please email me or send me a message on Canvas.